so excited to introduce our guest today, one of our dear friends and fellow therapist and talented author, Elizabeth Earnshaw. Liz is a licensed marriage and family therapist, certified Gottman therapist, and the author of I Want This to Work and her new book, Til Stress Do Us Part, How to Heal the #1 Issue in Our Relationships. Welcome, Liz. We're so excited to have you on ShrinkChicks.
Thank you for having me.
Wait, but we really owe it to our children of how we became good friends.
Yeah, tell the story.
We knew each other from around, right? Like we always knew each other was, and then it was till we ran into each other at a playground and our kids became friends that we got really close.
Yeah, you like saw me from across.
Yeah.
I was like all postpartum and like in a fog, and I think you were like, Liz Earnshaw. And I was like, hi, who's talking to me?
It's like when you're out and you don't want to see anyone you know, like that kind of feeling.
And then I saw somebody who I think is like really cool, and I was like, I even think the first thing I said to you was, I just had a baby, so that's why I look weird.
That is the 100% thing. The first thing that was said. I was like, I don't know. I think you look great. Let's hang out. And then we started.
You were like, I wouldn't know it. I was like, oh, really? Okay. And then I think her stroller was like across the place.
We did eventually find. I know we did. Your daughter was.
We did find the baby.
We got her. She was fine. But we love you. I'm sure so many people follow Liz Listens on Instagram. But also, like, I just have to say, like, I love you so much, and I'm so glad we became close this year. And like, what an honor to talk with you. And like, we got to read Til Stress Do Us Part, and it's fucking awesome.
Amazing.
Oh, thank you.
So tell us about your new book and where the idea to write it came from.
Yeah. So several years ago, I had a baby and I hated my husband after the baby was born, which I love my husband. So that is a very weird thing for me to have felt. And at that point, I started wondering, what is going on? My husband is a really like wonderful human. I love him. I think I'm pretty nice and wonderful, and I try my best. And I'm a therapist, and I can't figure out how to fix things. And it was at that point that I started to really try to understand it a little better. Like, what happens to really busy people who have lots of things going on? For me, it was kids. For other people, it might be other things. And I started just reading a lot about it, and then started seeing all of my couples, these themes were showing up of, this isn't about these people not loving each other and not being, quote, happy together. It's about the fact that they have so much going on. They have so much stress that they become completely depleted in themselves and their lives, that who do they take it out on? They take it out on each other, and they withdraw from the relationship, or they like overly engage in too much dialogue and they argue and all of those things. And so I've been thinking about it for years. And then finally last year, I told the person I work with on my books, I was like, I need to write about this because it is just coming up everywhere.
You know what I love
That's
in the
awesome.
book is like how open you are, and you talk about your own relationship. And I don't know if you feel this way, but we've talked about this before, that as couples therapists, we always had this feeling of like, I need to be in like the best place in my relationship in order to be able to like help couples in some way. Like there's kind of this, I don't know if it's like just shame around like, oh, if I'm struggling in my relationship, like how can I help other people? But like we're human beings. And of course, like we also have relationship struggles. And so I just love that you use your experience and you talk about that, because it's just so relatable, like the stress piece and how stress, I mean, like, we've all experienced this. But
Wait, so how did you identify stress as the #1 issue in the relationship? Because you're right, most people blame it on communication or disconnection. So like, how did you figure this out?
There were just a lot of different points. So the first thing that I figured out was something's going on with the mental load in our relationship. And for people listening, the mental load has to do with any of like the energy resources you're using your brain on to keep your relationships and your household functioning, right? So it's like remembering things, delegating, researching everything. And at first, when I was trying to figure out why are we so frustrated with each other, why can I not stand this human anymore? what I came upon was mental load information. And I was like, okay, this is it. I'm so upset with Andrew because why am I the one researching where my kid's going to go to school in 16 months? Why am I the one who is remembering that we need dryer sheets? Like, why is this all on me? Well, we talked about these things and he actually rapidly improved. And I know I'm very lucky with that because that's not always the case, but he very quickly, and I'm not saying like in a day, but in a year, was able to say, I see this, I'm working on it. And I will say at this point in our relationship now, he remembers almost everything. I actually don't do any doctor's appointments. I don't do anything. So that happened quickly. And yet we were still kind of unhappy about things. And I was like, okay, well, that improved. That's something that's really important. It does reduce some stress, right? But what else is going on here? And then I got my Gottman certification. And I would say that that was a huge turning point because one of the most important things in Gottman method couples therapy is the recognition that if somebody is physiologically flooded in the session, that your session can't continue as usual, that they're not going to be able to talk about things, problem solve, be curious, be affectionate. And so at that point, I was recognizing in session if someone is under distress, we have to do something and we have to take a pause. And then I would say about 2 years ago, I started having all these couples coming in who, like I described to you, are otherwise happy. Like they are, quote, compatible. They really like each other. When I first met them, when they first got together for premarital counseling or something, they were the couples who were like, yes, you should get married. And then life happens. People start to get sick. They die. Money gets tight. Kids come into the picture. And they would come in and they would have these ridiculous arguments. And they would even laugh about them in session. And I started to then put all these pieces together. Like, okay, Andrew and I, we still struggle, even though we've gotten rid of this like one very kind of popular topic in our relationship. What's going on with us? Couples struggle in session if they're under distress. But wouldn't that mean that if they never get a break from the distress, that they're always going to be struggling in session or not? That's what's happening with my couples that I see. And it doesn't matter if they know how to communicate. It doesn't matter if they know not to have an affair with people. The problem is that if they are distressed, nothing else is going to improve. And so you have to figure out how do you fix that overall distress.
Mhm.
Oh, I love that.
It's so good. Okay, so can we dig into that a little bit? Because I feel
Yeah.
like that like piece of it is important. And someone, we put out listener questions and someone asked, what's something I can do in the moment when I'm not regulated in a conversation? And I also wanted to add, like, what can I do if I recognize my partner isn't regulated in a conversation? Can you take us into that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. So there's obviously mindfulness techniques, which I feel like most people know about, but for some it could be an aha moment. And what that is, it's being able to somehow bring yourself back. It doesn't have to be woo-woo. I'm not asking you to like sit in silence for 24 hours. It's you're
I
starting to,
am.
what did you say?
I am. The only way to solve your marriage.
Sit for 24
The
hours
only
and
way.
do not speak.
Just sit crisscross applesauce on the floor.
In
12 hours.
darkness for
Do
some
not-
reason.
So what it actually means is you're recognizing you're getting dysregulated. To bring yourself back to the moment, you can do anything with any sensation. So it could be saying, I'm just going to take 2 minutes to go get a glass of orange juice and drink something for a second because that brings me back. The taste brings me back. I'm going to rub my hands on my rough jeans for a second because that brings me back. That's something that you can do in the moment. Another thing that I tell people to do is to start narrating what they're thinking that they want to do instead of saying what they want to say. So what that looks like is instead of saying, F you, I hate you, I want a divorce, it can actually be helpful to say right now in my head, there's a lot of mean things I want to say to you. And I'm so angry that I'm going to slam the door and I'm going to say something I don't mean. So I need us to stop. Narrating what you're thinking that you want to do, number one, brings you awareness of what your dysregulation is making you do. And number two, it's like a warning shot to your partner of like, back up, leave me alone. And hopefully, if they're not totally dysregulated in that moment, they can say, okay, well, let's take a break. Now, if you were in therapy, obviously, I would work with the two of you on what's the break plan and how do you decide to take a break so it doesn't feel like abandonment? It doesn't feel like it's going to get swept under the rug. And you know that you can say to the other person, I'm not in a good spot. And can we step away for a few minutes? The thing is that what we know is if you're physiologically in that space, there's not a ton you can actually do in the moment to become a better communicator. If you've gotten there, it's just time to take a break. It takes about 20 minutes for somebody on average to come down from being in a distressed state. So the best thing you can do is get away, if that's possible. But in order for that not to cause harm in the relationship on the tail end, you actually have to come back at some point.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of people that are listening to you right now are thinking like, okay, well, what about my kids? Right. So me and my partner just really, we're trying to have a conflict about, I don't know, fucking the doctor's appointments or whatever. But my daughter's screaming the next room over. So neither of us can go de-escalate because we have to deal with real life.
Yeah. The reality is that sometimes you're not going to de-escalate. I'm very realistic. I am not a therapist that expects that anyone is going to be Zen all of the time. So if you can't just go into the other room and de-escalate with each other, you can still choose to drop the topic. That is true. And sometimes we have to take actions even if they're hard. And people don't like that answer, but it's the truth. Like, I'm somebody, when you piss me off, I am fight. And so I am not saying this from not having experience. I want to keep going at it. I want to be like, are you kidding me? Like, da 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 da. I don't care if the kid's in the other room. We're going to talk. And Terry Real talks about this a lot. Something I've had to work on with my own character is recognizing that's not a good quality. And it's my job, even if my nervous system is completely hijacked, to figure out how do I still, quote, walk away from the conversation. And there's a lot of different tools you might put in place for yourself. You know, I might have to do the thing where I'm like, I want to rip your head off right now, but our kid's in the next room. I'm not going to do it. And you're so lucky that they're there and I'm going in the other room. Or your tool might have to be that you put it down on a piece of paper to talk about it later. Your tool might be that breathing helps you. It might be that utilizing mindfulness helps you, whatever it is. And it's still your job to say, nothing good is going to come of this. I know what my character defect is, and I'm going to deal with that. And I'm going to learn how to navigate it so that I'm no longer a part of this interactional cycle.
Liz, it's almost like you're saying that we have more control of ourselves than we think we do.
We do. But
but people, you know, have people come in and they're like, well, this is just who I am.
Yeah.
Or
you see them try to
want to be.
Yeah, or they try to control their partner, right? Like they want to change their partner instead of taking responsibility for their part in the dynamic.
Yeah, and sorry, go ahead, Jen.
No, you go.
I was going to say multiple things can be true at the same time. You can have a hijacked nervous system, which isn't your fault.
Right.
That's just your physiology. And it could just be because of how your body is. It could be because of trauma you've experienced. It could be because of what was modeled to you, not your fault necessarily. And you then, after knowing that you do this thing, have to have radical responsibility in how do I then change what happens to my nervous system since I know it happens. And here's things that I can do to change what happens to my nervous system.
It's so good. So we talked about disconnection, right? Like what happens when there's a lot of stress and there's a level of disconnection. What about tips on connecting when life feels crazy? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, that's really, really hard. And when I'm working, and I'm sure if either of you are working with people who, like, we legitimately recognize they're busy. I think sometimes therapy advice can feel so textbook that it doesn't feel like actually applicable to real life. And so one might say, oh, just plan a date night every single Friday, or you just need to make sure that your phones are away and you're watching a show together and talking. And those are fine tips. I don't find them to be realistic for people who are actually busy. I find that maybe that could work in another phase of life. But let's say that you are in the sandwich generation, and I have a lot of clients, they're taking care of aging parents or ill parents who are sick. They have kids. They both have full-time jobs. telling them just take a date night every single Friday and that's going to improve your connection is like really going to feel pretty hopeless for
Yeah.
most people. And so when it comes to connection, I think one thing that can be really important, and I talk about this in my book, is sometimes we have to accept that we're in a phase of life that is just really hard. And sometimes when we don't accept that, we stress ourselves out more. And so we're thinking we're failures as a couple because we're not going on dates. We're failures as a couple because we don't sit down and talk at night. And that is like that's a meta issue. It's like now I'm stressed about the fact that we're too stressed out and too busy to change anything. And something that can actually be pretty freeing is to sit down and talk with your partner and say, I miss our connection. And let's think about small ways we can be connected, but also like how do we just want to like adapt to this right now in our lives?
Yeah.
We aren't seeing each other as much. How can we make sure we still know we love each other? And I think some things might have to be kind of like shoved in. It's like maybe we run errands together. Like, I don't get to see you. So let's go to the grocery store together. And that's when we'll talk. Maybe we're doing texting during the day because at night I'm not going to get to talk to you as much. Maybe on Sunday mornings we get up an hour earlier. We like to sleep in, but maybe that hour earlier is how we actually hang out. We have to adapt to the fact that we get less sleep. But it's like, how do you reality check and then just say, this is, if there's something that can be changed with how busy it is, this is the best we can do.
Yeah. You know, what's so funny is, okay, so I feel like you had this idea about what brings connection, right? Like it's a date night or it's doing a project together. The funniest thing is this week, okay, me and my husband do we do the same workout, but he only shows up like maybe 2 days a week. And I'm like there all the time. And everyone's like, Aaron, you look amazing. I'm like, okay. And on Monday,
That's always how it is for the men.
I know the testosterone. So on Monday, Aaron like really fucked up his shoulder working out. So he didn't go to the workout on Tuesday. By chance, during the workout Tuesday, I rolled my ankle and like couldn't walk. And so the funniest, so we come home, Aaron wasn't there, and I'm like, dude, it happened to me. And he's like, all right, let's walk. Like we're wobbling around the house together. Like, look at our brittle ass bones. This is our aging. And during that laughter was so much connection.
Yes.
Right. And it is not at all how you would think that connection looks like, what it should come from. But it was such a like, there is sometimes such an extraordinary within the ordinary.
For sure. And I think you just brought up a really good point, which is that things that have to do with connection are things that just happen in daily life. So the things that people do to connect, they have humor, they're curious, they solve problems together. Those are really the things that make us feel connected to another person. Unfortunately, and this is talked about in my book, people actually start to lose those skills the more and more stressed they are. So if you're in a very stressful scenario in your life, you're actually less likely to be humorous. Like, for example, a couple who is, and I'm not saying that you and Aaron don't have stress, but a couple who
Yes, we're totally stress free. That is
totally
absolutely true.
stress-free.
100%.
Neither of us
Nothing
were,
affects
yeah,
them.
not parents.
But
No,
you're in
no
some
multiple
way-
rounds of IVF.
multiple rounds of IVF, but and maybe this is something you could talk about. Some way you've managed to like keep the levels down enough that you can still laugh
Yeah.
about something actually that people who are outside of the window of tolerance would have actually gotten more distressed about their brittle bodies.
Yeah. But
right.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like, what do you think it is about you and Aaron?
Well, I don't know, but I was going to say, if we had had a newborn during that time, it wouldn't have been so fucking funny because I would have been like, I can't walk, you can't hold the baby, right? Like, so part of it, like the reason that we see this massive decrease in divorce when the kids are over 5 is because it's way easier.
Yes.
Life is simply easier. So there was one circumstantial stuff. I also think I'm hilarious. And so it's very
You
easy to
are.
laugh with me because everyone knows how funny I am.
You are actually.
But in all, but I do think one thing that we've always done is kept our sense of humor in our relationship, that no matter how hard it was, we were really good at making each other laugh and like kind of fucking with each other. But also, if that had happened 3 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago when Millie was younger, She wasn't in camp. She wasn't in school day. It wouldn't have been funny. I would have been freaking out.
And you know what? A really fun fact is when you start to notice you can't laugh at the other person poking fun at something hard, that's actually a really good sign that you've gone out, that there's been stress spillover and you've gone over your window of outside of your window of tolerance, and that you are in some way depleted in terms of your coping skills. So I'll give an example from this morning. I don't know why. I've like woke up later. I do have a baby.
Yeah, you do.
My baby like needed all this stuff. My husband decided he wanted to go to Dunkin' Donuts for us to get our breakfast. And
So
I
nice.
was like, that is so nice, right? But I was a major bitch. And so he's like, I'm gonna go get our breakfast and get you a coffee and da 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 da. What do you want? And I said, the same thing I always get, an everything bagel. And he was like, well, are you gonna eat it? And usually, my husband says stuff like that in a really funny way. Usually I hear that as like, and you're really going to eat that, aren't you, Liz? Because I don't eat anything anybody ever gets me from carry out. I say I want it and I don't eat it. So usually I'd laugh at myself and be like, probably not, but you can give it to the babysitter. And I said, what the fuck was that? And he went, I was just joking. And I said, well, you know why I don't eat it? Because by the time you get back, I have to go off to work. And then he said, well, I have to go shut down my computer really fast. I said, see, you're going to get back and I'm not going to get to eat it. And it changed our whole morning.
Yeah.
This person woke up. He was in a great mood. We were playing with our baby together. He was going to go get us breakfast. He made a joke that usually I would laugh at, and I couldn't take it. So what did that tell me right away? Because this is all I've been researching and talking about for years now, it told me, Liz, you're stressed, and that was inappropriate in the way that you talked to him. And I immediately, as soon as he left, I immediately was like, all right, how do I connect back with the moment? Like, look, the baby's being really cute right now, or George, come give me a hug, or let's go outside and have breakfast. And as soon as my husband came in the door after I had the 10 minutes apart, I said, that was really rude of me. Like, thank you so much for getting a bagel. And you're right, I probably won't eat it. And then like I didn't eat it. And so as I walked out the door, I said, I'm leaving that on the counter. You can give it to somebody. And I kind of laughed. But humor for anybody listening, if you notice that you're not finding things funny in a really hard world, it means that you are stressed out and that you need to figure out, how can I soothe myself so that I can come back into being me and not being this stressed out version of me that I don't like.
What
Yeah.
is that? So tell us, because, with anyone listening to this feeling like, okay, I do have that stress spillover and I'm having a hard time getting back to a place of humor. What would you suggest they do to get back to themselves? Like, what would, it sounds like you really grounded yourself and you played with the baby. And like, if for anyone listening, like, is there anything specific or anything they can think about of like, how do I deal with that stress spillover so I can get back to myself?
Yeah, so there's a few things. There's like two things that have to do with like the regulation of it. So it's self-regulation, but then also there's co-regulation. And so sometimes the self-regulation is all you need. It was enough for me in that moment to say, oh, I know what's happening. Chill out, Liz. Like, you're going to get to work on time. I don't even know what you're mad about, but take a deep breath and take 10 minutes. That was enough. So sometimes it's, what can I do to regulate myself right now? And we're not going to get through all of those ideas in a podcast episode, but doing something pleasurable, even if it's just for a moment, shocking your nervous system a little bit. So like taste, changing the temperature around you, which might mean walking outside or touching something cold, taking a beat. So take your shower, write something down, honestly, scroll on your phone for like 10 minutes, like whatever you need to do to like snap out of what's happening for you can help with self-regulation. Co-regulation, though, is something that if the self-regulation isn't working, you might need, which means that you need a partner who's good at working with you on de-escalation. And I talk about like de-escalatory behaviors versus escalatory behaviors. Now, luckily, Andrew's not in the same place as me this morning, right? So if he was also in a bad place, we would have escalated with each other. He did for a second almost get there, right? He almost said, forget it, I don't need to go. He said that. And I said, no, I still want you to go. And then, that was awful. And then, he was like, okay, I'll go. But if he was in a bad place, he might have been like, I'm not going and we'll just eat something here. I don't know what you want, and stomped away. He could de-escalate with me. So even though he got frustrated for a second, he said, okay, I'll be back quickly, right? He was trying in the moment he noticed that I was stressed, and he was trying in the moment to soothe me. And so I talk a lot to couples about, what are you doing to help your partner to feel safe and secure in this moment? When they're not acting like themselves, it's because something doesn't feel safe and secure. And so your job, if you have it in you, if you're not outside of your window of tolerance, is to help. So if that self-regulation isn't happening, it's tapping into the other person and having them help you. Now, obviously, this is a proactive conversation that you have to have with each other, but it's really, really important in relationships.
A
Okay.
proactive conversation.
Yeah.
Essential.
Somebody really was very interested in your Instagram. So we have to do this listener question because they really want it answered. Okay. You recently posted on Instagram about defending a family member over your partner if your partner shares something the family member did to upset them, and how detrimental this can be to your relationship. Can you shed more light on this?
Oh my gosh. Yes. I mean, this comes up in almost every couples therapy session I have. Do you guys ever see this?
Yes. But
Your
this isn't
personal
about
life?
us. This is about you.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm just saying it's like such a big
Yes,
issue.
huge.
Even comes up in my own life.
Yes.
So when we're in a committed relationship, that person becomes our primary attachment figure, right? And so we need to know that we're safe and secure with them. And when we bring a problem to our primary attachment figure and they tell us it's not a problem, that in itself is really destabilizing. Now, when we bring a problem to our primary attachment figure and it's related to somebody that they care about, and then they tell us it's not a problem, that's even more destabilizing, because it's like, wow, there's people really close to you that are a risk to me and my well-being. And yet you're willing to let them do it. You're willing to protect them. And you're not recognizing that I need protection in this moment.
Mhm.
What does that mean about us and about whether or not you're looking out for my best interest, right? Trust is all about the belief of, you've got my best interest at heart, even when you make a mistake. And so when somebody does that, it breaks trust, because it's, you do not have my best interest at heart. You actually have your mother's best interest at heart, your best friend from high school's best interest at heart, because it's important to protect them and not me. I got a question that along with this, that was like, but like, what is a person supposed to do if they actually didn't think their friend did anything wrong? That doesn't actually matter. The thing that matters is that you are acting in ways that create security in your relationship. And so whether you think what your friend did was wrong or not, what is going to create security in this relationship with your partner? And the thing that's going to create security is saying, I've got your back. Even if you didn't see it, a lot of people will argue that I didn't see my sister say that thing to you. And it's like, even if you didn't see it, so what? You can still go back to your sister and say, hey, I've noticed that something has been going on when we're all together. Like, what's up with you? Emmalee or Jen, whoever this person's partner is, when I see her with us, she doesn't seem comfortable, and I don't like that. I need you to help with that. What you might be noticing as I'm talking about this is I'm using the word I. So when you are sticking up for your partner, you don't want to say, Emmalee told me that you were rude to her when I left the room. what's up with that? Because then that makes the partner the bad guy and even more of an outsider. They're already an outsider. What you want to do instead is say, what I've noticed is, and I'm not cool with it, and do it quickly. Now, interestingly enough, people avoid this at all costs, even though they're saying, my sister's wonderful, my mother's wonderful, my brother would never do any of that. It's like, well, if they're so wonderful, then what's the deal with being able to say something to them? That's what I always say to the
Ooh.
client. You know, they'll say, no, like my dad is such like a loving guy. He would never hurt my wife. He's funny. That's it. Okay. He's so wonderful. You have such a strong relationship with him. It shouldn't then be that hard to say, hey, I've noticed that your jokes have kind of crossed the line. If you aren't able to say that, why? Well, because he'll get mad at me. And then I say, well, why is it more important to protect yourself from his anger than from your partner's anger? And it's because you know you'll get away with it. And then they're like, well, that's not what I mean. I don't want to get away with it. And it's like, no, but that's why, because your partner's going to have to suck it up. And the other person is going to have some conflict with you and you don't want to deal with that. And that's a little bit difficult. But when we're in relationships, we have to have really strong spines and we have to be able to say what needs to be said, even when it's really hard.
Yeah. I feel like the number one thing I love that you're talking about this, Liz. I feel like the number one thing that people will say in a situation like that is like, well, that wasn't their intent. He didn't mean that. That's just how you interpreted it. And it's like,
And I often will empathize and be like, maybe that's the case. You grew up with these people, you know them well. So maybe they communicate in their own language and you understand the language. Other people don't understand the language, but it still had an impact. And so just because you are able to tolerate the way that things are said or what is said, it doesn't mean that people outside of your mini culture and your family can tolerate that too. And so now that you're creating a different unit, your job is to protect that unit and what can be tolerated in that unit. And that can't be tolerated in this unit. And that's hard. I mean, it's really hard to start to navigate things with people who have always been in your life. And if they're truly strong relationships, you should be able to do it.
I'm going to make this so surface level now, but I watch a lot of reality TV,
we
it's
know.
my guilty pleasure. But the one thing that I think a lot of the couples do well on like Real Housewives is that no matter what, like whoever's in the Real Housewives can be like having this like very strong reaction, but the partners are always backing them up. Like there's such a like loyalty in a lot of the ways. I mean, it's not all the time, but I always look at that and I'm like, wow, I'm actually like very impressed that like no matter what's happening, you are on your partner's side. And so it made me think about that. I know once again, I'm making it very surface level and
Yeah, no,
connecting
but I
it to
think that's a
reality.
good example.
Yeah.
And one of the questions, I think the pushback to that would be like, well, like, would you enable a partner who's totally out of control? And it's not about that. It's about behind when you go home, you might then say, this is my limit. This isn't about other people, but my limit is it's not fun for me to go out with you when you're screaming at people. And like, I'm not going to like throw you under the bus in front of these people, but hey, I'm not going out with you and the girls anymore if every single time there's all this drinking and there's all this screaming. But that's between you and your partner, right? Like this is all between you and your partner. And how do we navigate things as a unit instead of allowing all these outside forces to come in and to cause chaos within our unit?
Yes.
So Liz, as you know, we play a game on this show with every guest we have on, which is calling bullshit, calling BS. Will you call some bullshit for us?
Yeah.
Tell me some bullshit in your field, anything you want to debunk here.
I feel like Amelia would agree with this bullshit. I'm talking about Amelia at their practice.
Yes.
That couples therapists aren't going to like say the truth about things. I don't like saying like couples therapists don't take sides, but I think that's what people say. And it's not really about taking sides, but like I will very clearly speak out about things that I think are dysfunctional, because my job is to help people have a functional relationship. And so I'm not the type of therapist who's going to sit there and be like, if that's how you feel, sure, So one piece of bullshit is when people say couples therapists shouldn't take sides, or couples therapists shouldn't have like a strong stance, and that's just not the case.
I love it.
We love that.
Liz, first of all, let me say I'm so excited. I already had my pre-order in for Stress Do Us part. I'm so excited. It comes out in September. Everyone go to wherever you get. I did it on Amazon. I'm sorry. I'm supporting Jeff Bezos. It is what it is. Go please pre-order Liz's book. She is life-changing. This is life-changing. But where else could people find you to keep hearing all of your amazingness?
Yeah, so my website, ElizabethEarnshaw.com. That's probably a pretty easy thing to remember. It's just my name, and then Instagram at Liz Listens.
And that will all be noted in the show notes today. Check out her book. Check out I Want This to Work. Everything Liz does is amazing. I am forever grateful that our children connected us and made it there now. And also, I'm working part-time as your realtor currently. I am currently I'm currently trying to get Liz to move closer to me.
Wonderful.
You're putting in the work. You're like, you are sending me more listings that are accurate to what I want than a realtor would.
Yeah, I think I'm doing a great job.
I think maybe
I've been working hard.
Everyone moves in together, and then we could have a real episode.
That would be a reality show
What
right
if
there.
we just all bought houses on the same block, and all we talk about is like group practices and mental health.
Like we're in.
Commune. We're in.
Yes, let's commune. We're momming it. We're communing it. This will eventually be a reality show, because it would probably become very weird. And so I'm in for it. Liz, thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
We love you. Check out all the amazingness that Liz does in the show notes today.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Shrink Chicks.
We'll see you back here next week for another session.
In the meantime, if you want a question answered or a topic discussed, follow us on Instagram at ShrinkChicks. And if you're looking to get connected with a therapist like us to start or continue your therapeutic journey, visit thetherapygroup.com. Just fill out a contact form on our website, and we will personally match you with one of our amazing therapists. And for all of our therapists and group practice owners out there, we also offer group practice consulting.
And if you're looking to support yourself further and support our show, check out our amazing merch options at shrinkchicks.com/merch and our Know Yourself, Grow Yourself journal on Amazon. Also, if you'd be so kind, we'd love a rating, review, and for you to share with a friend or an enemy or a mother-in-law, honestly, whoever needs it, so that we can keep reaching more people on our mission to bring mental health topics to your ears every week.
Thanks for being here with us. And don't forget, to grow yourself, you got to know yourself.